Well, two players won the Cy Young Award. One was a trade that, let's be honest, didn't work out so well for the Red Sox so far. And the other was a trade that the Tigers are really glad they didn't make.
You are Locked On MLB, your daily MLB podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, baseball fans, and welcome to Locked On MLB, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. This is the daily podcast. We talk about all of Major League Baseball. I am your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. Please call me Sully. Today's episode is brought to you by our good friends over at FanDuel. FanDuel, you know what it is. It's America's number one sports book. And let me tell you something. If you put in a winning bet, you can earn back $150 for your first $5 bet that wins. Visit fanduel.com to get started. So, yeah, we are here. Some people are already in the chat. What's up there, Daniel Barry, who's already written in? I'm recording this pretty late on the 20th day of November. We're officially in late November, and we're still handing out awards. They did a big razzle dazzle award show for the all MLB team, and they're doing the handing out of the Cy Young Award and the Rookie of the Year Award and everything basically on Zoom. And it looked like it had the budget of, well, let's face it, Locked On MLB. Now, that's not a slam on Locked On MLB. I'm very glad and to be working for the Locked On Podcast Network, and the money has been coming in. But shouldn't baseball have a slightly better production value than what you're currently watching right now? I watched the presentation of the Cy Young Award today. Brian Kenny is fantastic. He really is. He's terrific. But then they would have Greg Maddux and Pedro Martinez. Pedro Martinez is my favorite player of all time, and Greg Maddux is one of the great pitchers in baseball history, introducing Skubal and Chris Sale as the Cy Young Award winners, and they're on Zoom. Now, COVID's over, and it's the announcement of the Cy Young Award should feel like it has bigger production values than a Zoom family reunion. And you're asking the Chris Sales of the world to set up their camera. Now, Chris Sale is a multimillionaire, and I'm sure wherever he lives, there is a film student there who would love to set up a good shot. But evidently, he set up his laptop, and he was sitting in this wicker thing, and as he was sitting back, it was kind of enveloping him, and he looked like he was sitting in the Total Recall chair that Arnold Schwarzenegger sat in that great movie. It was just a weird shot. And even Pedro Martinez, who was, doing it from his home, and it's nice to see Pedro's home, but the sound was kind of cutting it out. Why? Because he was on Zoom. Saints, get Pedro in a tux or a great looking suit. You can still have the whole family getting together and cheering on. The Tarik Skubal had every Skubal in the world around him. It was warm. It was nice. It was fine. But can we up the production value just a tiny bit? But first, let's talk a little bit about Skubal. Skubal won the Cy Young Award, and he was basically the Triple Crown winner. And if you took a look at the results of the Cy Young, he was the unanimous first. He got every first place vote. It was unanimous. 30 first place votes for 210 points altogether. Seth Lugo was second. He had 14 second place votes, and a smattering third, fourth, and fifth place votes. Emmanuel Clase, remember, this is a regular season award, not a postseason award, as Clase got rocked in the postseason. He got 9 second place votes, 7 third place, and a smattering of fourth and fifth. A couple other people got second place votes. Cole Reagans of the Royals. That's so interesting. 3 voters felt that Seth Lugo didn't have the best year of a Kansas City pitcher. Corbin Burns, who's going to go ching pretty soon, and Logan Gilbert. Interesting. Got a second place vote. Framber Valdez got a couple of third place votes, and it's mattering of fourth and fifth place votes. Kirby Yates of Texas got one fourth place vote. Yusei Kikuchi got one fifth place vote, as did Cade Smith. But Tarik Skubal, pretty clear Cy Young winner. You like traditional stats? Well, he led the league in wins, ERA, and stolen bases. He had the highest ERA plus. He had the highest FIP. He pitched 192 innings, struck out 228, and walked only 35. But his biggest contribution, in my very humble opinion, is the fact that he was the ace of this Tigers team that looked dead from the neck up for a big chunk of the season. And he put the team on his back. I mean, he had a phenomenal first half. He went 10-1 with an ERA under 2 in the first half. He was solid in the second half and had he was terrific in August. He was fantastic in September. And that's the moment when the Tigers, who were just dead, stunned everyone and leapfrogged Minnesota and Seattle and got to the division series eventually. Not that that counts in this voting, but he was the ace of that. Now, remember, come the trade deadline, Tarik Skubal was a hot commodity. He looked like he was going to be a pitcher who was going to get one of the biggest windfalls of on the trade market. He was a legit ace, and the mindset was, hey, he's a legit ace. The Tigers are going nowhere. They should get something while they could. And the Tigers did sell at the deadline. Jack Flaherty was sent packing for Trey Sweeney and a minor leaguer named Theron Liranzano, who's a 20-year-old catcher in single-A ball. Now, as it turned out, Trey Sweeney became the former Dodgers shortstop in their farm system, became a key part of the team that went on to get to Game 5 of the division series against Cleveland. They got themselves a starting shortstop. I wonder what would have happened to the Tigers' chances if they held on to Jack Flaherty. Jack Flaherty is perfectly fine with results. He got a World Series ring for his troubles. But sometimes, and this is why the absurdity of trying to determine who the winner of the trade deadline is, while the trade deadline is going on, it's banana boats to try to do that. Who would have thought the trade that I don't remember if anyone mentioned it, but the biggest trade of the trade deadline turned out to be a 3-team trade between the St. Louis Cardinals, the Chicago White Sox, and the LA Dodgers. I don't remember a lot of people jumping up, doing jumping jacks for that trade when it happened. But it landed the Dodgers Michael Kopech, who was unbelievable the second half of the season, and Tommy Edman, who didn't play a single game before arriving in Los Angeles due to his injuries, and he won the National League Championship Series MVP and was a big part of the disastrous fifth inning for the Yankees in the clinching Game 5 of the World Series. The Tigers held on to Tarik Skubal, and now on his birthday, his 28th birthday, he becomes a Cy Young Award winner. I got a hat. Tarik Skubal got a Cy Young Award. And we're going to see how this translates for the rest of his career. He's a 28-year-old playing for a rising Tigers team. And they've got a Cy Young Award winner that they didn't trade away. And if they play things right, they could build upon this and maybe be a big part of this division moving forward. Well, another player who was part of a trade that I actually defended earlier this year, it didn't work out, is suddenly and shockingly putting together an interesting case for, say it with me, the Hall of Fame. All right, let's hear from our friends over at FanDuel. Get ready to tackle NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 Sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the National Football League. Yeah, I mentioned this before and I'll say it again. I defended the Chris Sale trade when it happened. If you're going to host a show like this, and I know I'm hosting a show like this, you're going to have to make predictions, takes, and things like that. I'm not just going to break down what happened the night before. And I'm probably going to talk a lot about baseball history because that's one of the things I love about baseball. But I am going to try to make predictions and give my opinions about things. Sometimes I'm 100% right. Sometimes I'm 100% wrong. And I can't do this show and not sort of say guilty as charged when I'm wrong. I've been really wrong about 3 things this year. I read the Shohei Ohtani gambling thing wrong. I thought Ohtani was covering for his buddy. That's what it looked like to me. And then we found out later, it's like, oh no, this was the talented Mr. Ripley. I was wrong about the Mets. I was wrong about the Mets saying that they should be sellers at the trade deadline because I didn't trust a good month or a good pair of months in the middle of the summer, where after 2 fabulous months, they were still on the outside looking into the playoffs. And I thought it was a seller's market, and it was. The third thing I was wrong was the Red Sox were lucky to get anything for Chris Sale. Now, I had reason for having all my takes. They just turned out to be wrong. And the same thing with Chris Sale. Now, Chris Sale, going into this season, he pitched okay in 2023 for the Red Sox. He made 20 starts in 2023. His ERA wasn't terrible. He pitched 102 and 2/3 innings, so that's about 5 innings a start. He also was 34 years old. And after winning the World Series in 2018 and being the pitcher on the mound, he had a mediocre year in 2019. He missed all the COVID year. He only pitched 9 games in 2021. He pitched well, but it was only 9 games. He essentially between 2019 and 20 in the 2020, 2021, and 2022 seasons, he pitched fewer than 50 innings total over 3 years. And he came back to throw 100 innings in 2023, but wasn't that great. Sometimes was good, but sometimes was not great. And he looked like he was at the end. That's what it just looked like. It looked like the man was at the end. And with a couple of years left of his contract, the Red Sox got Vaughn Grisham, who was a young, highly touted prospect for the middle infield. And I thought, hey, if the Red Sox could flip an aging Chris Sale and get a starting second baseman, I thought that would be a good thing because Chris Sale was one injury away from being, well, a victim of those letters DFA or being kind of like Cliff Lee or Steven Strasburg were at the end of their contracts where it was like, thanks for the memories, man. Good to see you in spring training. Hey, Sale made a start. Oh, he's injured again. That's what it looked like it was going to be. And so the Red Sox packaged him off, got what they think is going to be the second baseman of the future, and Vaughn Grisham could still very well be that. Now, if you are calling this a horrible trade, and it turned out to not work out, I need you to show me your time-stamped take that Chris Sale was going to have a Cy Young caliber season for the Atlanta Braves. That he would lead the league, if you like traditional stats, wins, which I don't really care much about wins. ERA, I care more about ERA, strikeouts, ERA plus, FIP, homers per 9 innings. He struck out 225 batters in 177 and 2/3 innings and only walked 39. And was a huge reason why the Braves, well, had a very good season this year. It didn't end the way they wanted it to, but it was still a very good season. And they ain't doing piddly poo without Chris Sale. I want you to send me your take. I want to see it time stamped of when you said, oh, they gave up on a Cy Young Award winner. Because this was a stunner. And I have to say, even though it hurt the Red Sox, I'm a big Chris Sale fan. Chris Sale played the first 7 years of his career with the White Sox, the next 7 years with the Red Sox, split in between them, had his big comeback season with the Braves. And now when you take a look at him and you add Cy Young Award winner with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 straight top 5 Cy Young finishes. And the year before that, he was top 6. He was 5th in the Cy Young with the 2013 White Sox, 3rd in the Cy Young, having a great season with the 2014 White Sox, led the American League in strikeouts in all sorts of categories with the 2015 White Sox, finished 4th in Cy Young vote. 2016, his last year with Chicago, had another tremendous year. His first year with the Red Sox, he finished 2nd in the Cy Young vote, had 308 strikeouts and 214 in the 3rd innings pitched. And then the year with the Red Sox won the World Series. And yes, it was Chris Sale standing on the mound when they won the World Series. He finished 4th in the Cy Young Award vote and was an all-star each of those years. This year, he picked up a Gold Glove, an all-star appearance, and a Cy Young Award winner. You've got to now start to look at him as, is he putting together as a Hall of Fame career? If he didn't have this big comeback, I would say no. I would say he's in that Ron Guidry, Fernando Valenzuela, Dave Stewart, Oral Hershiser, Brett Saberhagen, Frank Viola territory of a pitcher who had a super high peak, just didn't do it for long enough. Now I think he's entering that Felix Hernandez territory, which was, okay, he had a pretty decent peak. And now we got to take a good long look at his career and say, who does he compare to? Going to baseballreference.com, the single greatest website in the history of planet Earth, he is comparable to a lot of pitchers who fall into that category that I said. Johan Santana, Garrett Cole, Cliff Lee, David Price, John Tudor. These are some, and Madison Bumgarner, all pitchers who have unbelievably high peaks. Just did they do it for long enough? There are 2 Hall of Famers that he has similarity scores to. One is Dizzy Dean, who had a super high peak, not a long peak, but an unbelievably high peak, and Satchel Paige, who they're using just the major league numbers for. And actually, no, it's Baseball Reference. So they are using his Negro League numbers, but those numbers are incomplete. So is he a Hall of Famer yet? Probably not. But it's now a more interesting conversation. And now comes the big question if you're a Red Sox fan. Is Vaughn Grisham a Hall of Famer? Let's hope so. By the way, there's one interesting thing. You sort of saw that this is the second time I'm going to mention Michael Kopech. Michael Kopech was traded to the White Sox in the Chris Sale trade and then was traded to the Dodgers in the deal that brought in Tommy Edman as well. Michael Kopech is getting a lot of mention in a Cy Young episode. But congratulations to the fabulous Chris Sale. And maybe start thinking Hall of Fame. I tell you, absolutely should be thinking about Hall of Fame is Juan Soto. And more than one person has asked me, why am I not mentioning some of the Juan Soto stuff? I've gotten a couple of private messages and a couple of, well, I'm not on Twitter right now, but Blue Sky messages and Instagram messages saying, oh, what did you think about the meeting that the Red Sox met him? What do you think that the Blue Jays met him? That's all for show. That's all for show for Scott Boras for keeping his client in the news. That's all for show to sort of get the idea, get the owners' hair raising up, going, oh boy, the Phillies might, oh boy, the Dodgers might. And it's also to show that the fan bases that we're making a run at him. Hell, I would love if the A's bet him. Come to Sacramento, sign an 11-year deal, and play in Sacramento. They won't, but what does it hurt to meet him? Because all of this is really a smokescreen. Juan Soto is an elite player. Juan Soto is putting together numbers. If you look at similar players through 25, Bryce Harper, Frank Robinson, Ken Griffey Jr., Mike Trout, Eddie Matthews, Miguel Cabrera, Andrew Jones, Mickey Mantle, Vladimir Guerrero Jr., and Orlando Cepeda. Very good company to be in. In other words, he is very much on the Hall of Fame trajectory. He has also been a MVP MVP candidate many times over, a Silver Slugger many times over. He's been a batting champion. He's led the league in walks. He's led the league in runs scored. He has hit 40 home runs a bunch of times. He's driven in 100 runs a bunch of times. He's been a World Series champion. Now all he needs to do is pile up numbers and make more money than you and I could ever dream of. So all these meetings with the teams are meaningless. And let me give you my 2 cents. It'll be a lot more than 2 cents to sign him. Yes, he had a nice presentation by the Red Sox and the Blue Jays. Who cares? It's still down to one thing. Who is going to offer him the most dollars? And that team will sign him. So there's really not much to the Phillies talked to him. All right. I maintain what I've said all along. He is a Met. Juan Soto will be a New York Met if the New York Mets want him, because they will pay for him. If the New York Mets don't want him, then he will probably, he will go to whoever offers him the most. I think the Mets have the deepest pockets, and they have a sense of urgency right now to strike while the iron is hot. And so if they want to sign him, they will. If the Blue Jays want to offer $1 more than the Mets, he'll be a Blue Jay. If the A's want to offer more than anyone, he'll be a Sacramento A. It's just that simple. There's not much to say about that. A lot of people have been asking me about and we're going to do more about the Rays, because that actually I think is the biggest story. I think the Rays have to figure this out, and they have to figure it out for next year. And I'm telling you, if it's moving to New Orleans and saying that's where you park, then that's where you park. Because we saw again today that the clashing between the Pinellas County and the Rays, the bad blood is brewing up between them. And I don't really blame either side at this point, except it's clear that whatever was agreed upon to be the cost of building a brand new ballpark for the Rays, that price has gone up. And Pinellas County says, do you know what? No, we're not going to pay it. And the Rays say, well, no, we don't want to pay it either. Then they will not have a stadium the rest of the decade. They will have to play minor league games or minor league ballparks for the rest of the decade. And we can't have that. I offer New Orleans. They play in the Superdome. They become the New Orleans Rays, or whatever you want to call them, the Zephyrs, whatever you want to call the team. But the Rays move there, and that's where they play. I don't take this lightly. I don't want to rip a team from its fan base. There are wonderful Rays fans there, and we see they have very good television ratings, but they can't play in minor league stadiums for the rest of the decade. And that's what we're looking at right now. Because if they're not going to play Tropicana Field this year, they're not going to play Tropicana Field the next year. Tropicana Field is probably not going to be repaired, which means they have to build a new stadium, and now they can't even figure out who's paying for it or when it will open. Where right now, if everything goes right, it's 2029, 2025, 6, 7, 8, a presidential term worth of games in a minor league stadium for a team that's having trouble with the revenue to begin with. You can't have this. Now I got a Scott Campbell writes, and anyone knows me, and I know I do, I have a strong feeling for this. Let the Rays to Montreal give those fans back a team that had theirs unrightfully taken from them. I don't know what condition La Stade Olympique is in. And I don't know if there's any extra hurdles that have to be jumped to have a team go in Canada. Of course, I got an Expos banner right there. I would love them. And here's the deal. If the Rays move there, they have to be renamed the Expos. And all of the Expos records have to be put back onto the squad. I do think baseball can survive and thrive in Central Florida. They've never had a chance because the stadium was put in the wrong place. And now the stadium is destroyed. But for the good of baseball, you can't have two teams wandering in the woods, two teams playing in minor league stadiums with no real financial plan in place for a replacement stadium. Now, we're going to see what happens in Las Vegas in the next couple of weeks. I could be surprised. And they could very well start building a ballpark in Las Vegas. I'll believe that when I see it. But I've made my thoughts on the A's very clear. I've also made it clear I am not for ripping a fan base, having the team ripped away from a fan base. I do not take that lightly. But I've never seen a situation like this, ever. This makes the situation of the Expos in the early 2000s look normal. All right, well, tomorrow we're seeing the MVP. Wow, a lot of intrigue there. Gee, I wonder who's going to win. Met fans, put it away. It's going to be Ohtani, and it's going to be Judge. And if it's not, then I don't understand how this works. But I'll tell you how this works. Follow us at Locked On MLB Pods on Twitter or whatever it's called now. And on Instagram, I'm your pal Sully. I'm at Sully Baseball and Blue Sky. Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram. Talking about two very worthy Cy Young Award winners and how one was wisely not dealt and the other was, well, wisely acquired. This has been Locked On MLB. I'm your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. Please call me Sully.